You have probably killed a cockroach without a second thought. Stomped it, sprayed it, flushed it. It seems like the simplest creature you will ever meet. But somewhere in the world right now, a wasp smaller than a grain of rice is doing something to a cockroach that sounds impossible. It is turning that cockroach into a living puppet. Not killing it, not paralyzing it completely. Something stranger. It is reaching directly into the roach's brain and rewriting its will to live. This is not science fiction. This has been documented, filmed, and studied for decades. And the real answer to how it happens is far stranger than anything a movie would invent. Meet the emerald cockroach wasp, Ampulex compressa, if you want the scientific name. It is a small, metallic green insect found across parts of Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Islands. On its own, it looks almost beautiful, iridescent, delicate, harmless. But it needs a cockroach to survive, not to eat directly, to use as a nursery. Here is where it gets disturbing. The wasp does not simply grab the cockroach and drag it away. That would be too easy, and cockroaches are fast, strong, and built to survive almost anything. So the wasp does something far more precise. It stings the roach twice. The first sting lands in the thorax. It is quick, almost surgical. This sting delivers a dose of venom that temporarily paralyzes the roach's front legs. For a few seconds, the cockroach cannot fight back, cannot run, cannot defend itself. And in that brief window, the wasp does something extraordinary. It aims for the roach's brain. Researcher Frederick Libersat at Ben Gurion University of the Negev has spent years studying exactly what happens next. His work, along with colleague Ramgal, mapped out something remarkable. The wasp's second sting is not random. It is guided. The wasp uses sensory feedback from its own stinger to navigate through the roach's tiny brain and find two specific clusters of neurons. Think about that for a moment. An insect with a brain smaller than a sesame seed is performing what amounts to targeted neurosurgery on another living creature, with a stinger as its only tool. The venom delivered at this second site does not knock the cockroach out. This is the part that surprises most people. The roach is not unconscious. It can still walk. It can still feel. But it loses something far more important than movement. It loses the drive to escape. Libersat's research showed that the venom directly suppresses the neurotransmitter octopamine in the roach's central nervous system. Octopamine is closely tied to arousal and the fight-or-flight response in insects. Without it, the escape instinct simply switches off. The roach is not paralyzed. It is compliant. Here is where the wasp does something almost gentle, if you can call it that. It walks up to the now docile cockroach, takes hold of one of its antennae with its jaw, and begins to lead it, like walking a dog on a leash. The cockroach follows. Willingly. It could, in theory, run at any moment. Its legs work fine, but it does not. Why would something choose captivity when freedom is right there? The answer is that this was never really a choice. The wasp did not convince the cockroach. It edited the part of the cockroach that would have wanted to leave. The wasp leads its zombified escort toward a burrow, sometimes one it dug in advance. Once inside, it lays a single egg on the cockroach's leg. Then it does something that seals the roach's fate completely. It packs small stones and debris into the entrance of the burrow, sealing the cockroach inside. Alive, compliant, and now, alone with a wasp egg attached to its body. The cockroach does not try to dig its way out. It does not try to remove the egg. It simply waits, docile, inside its own tomb. Within a few days, the egg hatches. A tiny wasp larva emerges and begins to feed, not immediately on vital organs. That would kill the host too quickly. Instead, the larva feeds on the roach's bodily fluids first, keeping alive as a fresh food source for as long as possible. Eventually, the larva burrows directly into the cockroach's body and begins consuming its organs from the inside, saving the vital ones for last. This keeps the roach alive through most of the process. A living pantry, aware, in whatever limited way a cockroach is aware, but unable and unwilling to resist. After about a week inside its host, the larva pupates. It forms a cocoon inside what remains of the cockroach's body. Roughly a month later, a fully formed adult wasp emerges from the corpse, ready to find a mate and repeat the entire cycle with a new victim. Scientists have studied this relationship extensively because it raises a question that goes far beyond insects. What exactly counts as free will if a few molecules of venom can switch it off entirely? A study published in the Journal of Experimental Biology, led by Libersat's team, demonstrated that when researchers blocked the venom's effect on octopamine receptors in lab conditions, the cockroach's escape behavior returned. The zombie state was reversible, at least chemically. This told researchers something important. The roach was never technically damaged. Its brain still had the wiring for fear and escape. The venom was not destroying anything. It was suppressing one very specific switch. That distinction matters more than it might seem, because here is the uncomfortable mirror this story holds up to you. You like to think of your own decisions as entirely your own. Your motivation to work, your urge to escape a stressful situation, your drive to get out of bed some mornings and stay under the blanket on others. You assume all of that comes from some deep, autonomous version of you making a free choice. But neuroscience has shown, again and again, that motivation and drive are not abstract concepts. They are chemical. Dopamine, serotonin, and yes, in insects, octopamine, all sit underneath what feels like free will quietly running the show. Change the chemistry, even slightly, and the choices change with it. Not because you become a different person, but because the switch that generates motivation was never entirely under your control to begin with. Researchers studying human motivation, including work summarized by neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky at Stanford University, have pointed to the same uncomfortable pattern in mammals. Depression, apathy, even the specific feeling of not wanting to leave a bad situation are strongly linked to disruptions in these same categories of neurotransmitters. The roach being led by its antenna into a sealed tomb is an extreme, visible version of something that happens quietly, invisibly, in brains far more complex than in insects. The cockroach is not stupid for staying. It is not lazy. It is not choosing its fate. Its wiring for escape has simply been turned down to zero by something outside its control. And that is the part of this story people rarely think about after they close the tab. Because most days, you assume every choice you make, every task you avoid, every burst of motivation or total lack of it, is entirely, purely you. But somewhere between the chemistry in your brain and the decisions you believe you're freely making, there is a wasp sting you cannot see. And most days, you never even notice it is there.